Let's take a moment to find out how to calculate the correct document size for different types of outputting images to screen, the printing press, an inkjet printer, and for sending to a lab. Now, in order to change the size of a document for a specific output device, I'll choose the Image menu and then select Image Size, or we can use the keyboard shortcut Command-Option-I on Mac or Control-Alt-I on Windows. On the left-hand side, we have a preview. We can go ahead and zoom in or zoom out, and we can use the hand tool to move around the image. We can also use Command 1 or any of the other shortcuts to zoom the image while we're in the image size dialog. If we want to resize this dialog, we can in order to get a larger preview. On the right, we can see that this file is just over 30 megs. Now, as I start making changes, there are two ways that we can do this depending on the results that we want to achieve. If I turn off the option to resample, then I can make changes to width or height or resolution, but we're not resampling the image. We can change the print size, for example, but we can't add or subtract pixels. We're just determining how many pixels we want Photoshop to put in a specific unit of measurement. For example, right now the resolution is set at 300. If I decide I want my width to be increased to 18 inches, well, because I can't add or subtract any pixels, that's going to decrease the resolution. Likewise, if I decrease the width down to 6 inches and I can't add or subtract any pixels, then the resolution has to be increased. All right, I'm going to hold down the Option key on Mac, the Alt key on Windows, and choose to reset this. When we have the resample option enabled, now I'm giving Photoshop permission to add or subtract pixels from my image. If I make the image smaller, Photoshop will throw away pixels, and if I want to make the image larger, then Photoshop will have to make up pixels. So leaving the resolution at 300 pixels per inch, this time if I change the width to 18 inches, then Photoshop will have to make up information. We can see that this was a 30 meg file, but if I want it this large at this resolution, it's going to be 125 meg files as Photoshop resamples it up. If we want to see what percentage of the file is going to be added, we can use this little option here, set it to %, and we can see that I am increasing this by 202%. So for every original pixel, I'm actually creating a new one. Okay, let's set that back to pixels. If we wanted to decrease the size here, say down to 6 inches, well, what was a 30 meg file will now be close to a 14 meg file because we're decreasing the size and Photoshop would throw away information. Next to the resample option, we can choose from a number of different algorithms to resize the image. If you choose automatic, which is the default, it's going to select the preserve details for enlargement when it's resampling up, and it's going to choose bicubic sharper when reducing or taking away pixels in the image. These two options are going to give the best results for the majority of images. And the nice thing about it is you don't have to remember to select the right one when you're resampling up or down, but you can always try the others and see what they would look like. For example, if your image has subtle gradients, you might want to try the bicubic option. For now, I'll leave it to automatic. So let's quickly take a look at how I would set the image size of the document for our output devices. If I need to resize for a specific screen, then I would change the units of measurements to pixels and then enter in that value. For example, if I needed this to be 1200 pixels wide, I would just enter that in. If I was going to go to the printing press, then I would change the units of measurements back to inches or centimeters or whatever unit of measurement you're using. And because I would want this to be 1.5 to 2 times the line screen, well, first let's enter in how wide we want this. Let's say I want this 18 inches wide, but the resolution doesn't have to be 300. Let's say I want to print to a 150 line screen at 1.5 times that line screen, that would give me 225 for my pixels per inch. As we can see, that still means that Photoshop will have to add quite a significant number of pixels for this image. Now, if we were printing to inkjet or if we were sending to the lab to print a continuous tone image, let's say we need our image to be 300 pixels per inch. I'll change that back to 300, and then we can just set the size that we need it. In this case, let's say we're printing 6 inches, and this would mean that Photoshop would be able to discard information and we'd have a smaller file size. Let's go ahead and apply that, and Photoshop will resize the image. We'll learn more about saving files in a later video, so for now, I will just close this image without saving changes. So there you have it. To resize your documents for a specific output device, be sure to use the image size command in Photoshop.